In the history of modern music, few bands have managed to redefine the rules of the game the way Radiohead has. From the angst-driven guitar rock of the 90s to genre-defying sonic landscapes in the new millennium, Radiohead didn't just evolve, they transformed what it means to be a band in the 21st century. Their journey is a blueprint for innovation, artistic integrity, and cultural resonance. And that's why today we're making the case that Radiohead is the most important band of the 21st century. Radiohead's story begins in 1993 with Pablo Honey. Most remember it for the global hit Creep, a song the band would grow to resent. But while the album was rooted in post-grunge and alternative rock, it hinted at something deeper, a restless dissatisfaction with convention. Though Creep became an anthem for outsider malaise, the band quickly distanced themselves from it, uncomfortable with being boxed in as a one-hit wonder. The rawness of Pablo Honey feels like a band searching for their identity, already aware that the formula of mainstream rock was insufficient for what they wanted to express. Then came the Bends in 1995, a seismic leap forward. Here, Radiohead began experimenting with richer textures and introspective lyrics, moving away from angst toward existential uncertainty. Songs like Fake Plastic Trees and Street Spirit Fade Out demonstrated a mastery of emotion through sound, blending delicate acoustic elements with soaring guitar arrangements. The album's emotional depth mirrored Thom Yorke's growing disillusionment with fame and media spectacle. The Bends pushed Radiohead toward emotional storytelling, allowing the listener not just to hear the music, but to inhabit it. The production, thanks to John Leckie and the growing role of Nigel Godrich, began moving toward a more cinematic style that would define their later work. More importantly, it showed that they were not content to simply exist within a genre. They were preparing to transcend it. But it was OK Computer, released in 1997, that truly changed everything. This wasn't just a great album, it was a cultural moment. In the midst of the late 90s optimism surrounding the digital age, OK Computer was a warning signal, a surreal, paranoid, and strangely beautiful vision of a world spinning out of control. Its themes of alienation, consumerism, and technological anxiety felt eerily prophetic. It was as if Yorke had seen the future of the 21st century and wasn't convinced it was going to be a good one. The album came out just as the world was beginning to confront the implications of globalization, the internet, and the erosion of individuality. Songs like Paranoid Android functioned as fragmented operas of societal collapse, while No Surprises cloaked despair in lullaby sweetness. This duality, where beauty and horror coexist, became a hallmark of Radiohead's style. OK Computer didn't just influence bands, it influenced entire genres. It invited musicians to think bigger, to experiment more boldly, and to see albums as cohesive artistic statements rather than mere collections of singles. It also made Thom Yorke a kind of anti-frontman, reluctant, skeptical, unwilling to play the role the industry expected. Then, in 2000, Radiohead made their most radical move yet. Kid A was not the album fans expected. Gone were the guitar anthems. In their place, ambient textures, glitchy electronics, jazz, and minimalist influences. There were barely any choruses. Some songs didn't have lyrics at all. But Kid A wasn't a rejection of their past. It was a deconstruction of it. This was the sound of a band dismantling the ego of rock and rebuilding something abstract, alien, and deeply human. Everything in its right place, idiotech, how to disappear completely. These weren't just songs, they were emotional transmissions from a cold postmodern world. The album's inspiration came, in part, from Yorke's mental breakdown and growing paranoia about fame and surveillance. He immersed himself in Aphex Twin, Autechre, and Arthur Russell. Kid A channeled those influences into something uniquely haunting. Critics were initially divided, but time has revealed Kid A as one of the most forward-thinking records ever made. The follow-up, Amnesiac, was not so much a sequel as a parallel universe. Pulling from the same sessions, it featured haunted jazz pianos, distorted radio frequencies, and cryptic lyrics that challenged listeners to find their own meanings. It was more fragmented, more cryptic, but no less compelling. It was as if Radiohead had opened a portal to the unconscious mind of the 21st century. Together, these albums didn't just expand the language of rock, they exploded it. They legitimized the integration of electronic music into the world of alternative rock and paved the way for countless artists like James Blake, Bon Iver, and even Kanye West. Thom Yorke became not just a rock star, but a cultural oracle. With Hail to the Thief in 2003, Radiohead began responding more directly to political climates, particularly the rise of authoritarianism and the war on terror. Tracks like 2 + 2 = 5 and A Wolf at the Door seethe with paranoia and dread, offering a distorted mirror to the chaos of the early 2000s. The album is messy, sprawling, and intentionally overloaded. It reflects the information overload of the internet age and the growing sense of global instability. Yorke's lyrics became more fragmented, a collage of news reports, nightmares, and whispered truths. But perhaps the most revolutionary moment came in 2007, when they released In Rainbows, not just for its music, which marked a return to emotional warmth and organic soundscapes, but for the way it was released. In Rainbows was offered online with a pay-what-you-want model, directly challenging the music industry's outdated business structures. It wasn't just a marketing gimmick, it was a manifesto. Music belongs to people, not to labels. It gave power back to the artist and proved that alternative models could work, inspiring an entire generation of independent musicians to follow suit. The album itself was lush, sensual, and deeply human. Songs like Weird Fishes, Arpeggi, and Videotape blend precision with vulnerability. It was a return to melody, but never to safety. The King of Limbs, in 2011, is perhaps their most underrated album. It stripped down melody in favor of rhythm and repetition. Built around looping motifs and ghost-like vocals, it was less about individual tracks and more about atmosphere, a forest of sound you could get lost in. It's an album that rewards patience. Its minimalism forces the listener to slow down, to notice the textures between sounds. Yorke's lyrics reflect both ecological concerns and a retreat into the self. It's not a crowd pleaser, but it's a crucial part of the Radiohead puzzle, a refusal to pander. And then came A Moon-Shaped Pool in 2016, a deeply emotional album laced with themes of loss, memory, and ecological collapse. The haunting string arrangements by Jonny Greenwood, now a respected film composer, brought Radiohead full circle, from rock band to cultural institution. Songs like Daydreaming and True Love Waits revealed a band unafraid to be vulnerable, still evolving, still taking risks more than 2 decades into their career. The album also coincided with Yorke's breakup after a 23-year relationship, adding a layer of personal grief to the already apocalyptic tone. This isn't just political commentary, it's a human response to a dying world. But what cements Radiohead's importance isn't just the music, it's the legacy. Their influence echoes in artists across every genre, from indie rock to hip-hop, ambient to experimental. Their fearlessness in pushing boundaries has redefined what it means to make music in the digital age. Their lyrics, often cryptic but always resonant, have shaped the political consciousness of a generation disillusioned by consumerism, war, and environmental collapse. They've never preached, but they've always warned. In an age dominated by algorithms and virality, Radiohead reminds us that music can still be art, strange, difficult, poetic art that refuses to be reduced to content, and their relevance hasn't faded. If anything, they feel more vital than ever. In a time of disconnection, climate anxiety, and technological overwhelm, their music feels like a mirror, sometimes cracked, sometimes foggy, but always honest. Radiohead didn't just soundtrack the 21st century, they helped shape its sound, its fears, its dreams. They taught us that innovation doesn't require abandoning humanity, and that the future of music lies not in noise, but in nuance. That's why Radiohead is the most important band of the 21st century, and they're still not done.